Hey guys, welcome back. In this video, I'll be showing you guys how to make these jumbo pants with elastic waistband, side pockets, and a rope. If this is the kind of video you feel like watching, please stay tuned as we begin. So guys, the first thing I did was to lay out my fabric, and I'm making use of Ankara print of about 3 yards. You can still use lesser than that. The reason why I'm using this is because I want my pants to be very bold and big, baggy. So if you want yours to be less baggy, please go ahead and use about 2.5 yards of fabric. Now I shared it into two equal halves. One is going to serve for the front and one is going to serve for the back. So just like I said, I have about 3 yards for this. I'm just going to use one for the front and one for the back. So I went ahead and folded my front piece into two, and you can see that one part is bigger than one side, and that's because I used my hip circumference to determine that. So the first thing I did was to place my tape rule this way from the waist of the pant. I'm just going to measure my hip line and then my crotch depth. So I'm taking away about 1.5 inch here for the band, and then the rest of the measurements is where I'm going to mark my crotch depth. So the crotch depth is about 12.5 for me, but I'm just going to extend it by 1 more inch and make it 13.5 because this is a free pant. So just go ahead and mark your chalk line there. That will serve as your crotch depth, and after you're done, just go ahead and use a ruler to connect it into a straight line like so. After I was done marking, I went ahead to place my tape rule this way. I divided my circumference of my hip line by 4, and then I marked the quarter here, and then I'm just going to add extra 6 inches for the freeness of this baggy pants. You can go ahead and make it lesser if you don't want it to be bigger. After marking 6 inches, I went ahead to mark extra 3 inches for the crotch curve. Now, I'm just going to repeat that again for more clarity. So place your tape rule this way and mark the quarter of your hip circumference, add 6 inches and then extra 3 inches for the crotch curve. And on that 6 inches mark, go ahead and just extend a straight line upwards this way, and from there make your curve. Now, if you don't want yours to be very big, deduct 1 inch from that 6 inches and then add your extra 3 inches for the curve. Now I'm just going to connect a curve from that part upwards into that line I made, and then at the side seam like this at the waistline, I'll go ahead and take away 1.5 inch and then use a ruler to slant it into the hip line. So I'll be leaving this side as it is, and then on the inseam like this, I'm going to take away 1.5 inch. Now I'll just go ahead and open up the sides and slit the pants just like so, and then I'll cut out the crotch curve. And the next thing to do is just to go ahead and cut out this part, okay, the part where I marked extra 3 inches. So like I said, if you want, you can just go ahead and cut it all the way down like this, just straight, but you can still go ahead and slant it and take away 1.5 inch at the lower part. For the purpose of this tutorial, I just left it that way. So I'll just go ahead and mark my chalk line on the wrong side of the fabric to determine the back and the front. And afterwards, I'll go ahead and use this front piece to cut out to the back piece of the pants. Now I almost forgot I didn't include the length. So I'm just going to place my tape rule this way, like this, and determine the length of the trouser. Remember that we're taking away 2 inches for the band at the waistline. So just place your tape rule this way and just measure your length. So my length is 43 inches. I'm going to add extra 2.5 inches and measure about 45 inches because I'm going to be hemming it with that allowance. So I'll just go ahead and cut it out like this and then use this to cut out the back. After placing my front piece on my back, I folded the back piece into 2 equal halves, and then I marked the wrong side. And as you can see, the back piece is wider than the front piece with about 2 inches. I'm only going to be adding measurements around the crotch and the waistline, and all other parts are like the length and the sides are going to remain the same because the front piece is already having all the necessary measurements. So the first thing I'm going to do is to place a tape rule this way, and then make sure that the tape rule is elongating at the back piece by 1 inch, and then mark 1 inch there because this is a free pant. You don't need to add much around that part. And then the next thing is to measure your hip line, okay? So for my hip line, I have 10 inch. So I'll just go ahead and place a mark there and use that as a guide to extend 2 inches on the back of the pants around the crotch, and afterwards I'll add extra 2 inches, okay, for the back piece. So I'm just going to use my chalk line and connect from that point all the way to this other 2 inches mark, and then straight to the 1 inch mark I gave for the back. I'm really sorry that the camera didn't capture that angle, so I'm just going to explain better. So this is the 2 inches mark you extend for the back piece. So I made a connection from that point, and then I placed my tape rule this way, marked my hip line, and then I used that as a guide to mark 2 inches at this point, and then also marked 1 inch above. So this is the point I'm going to be connecting into the line you are seeing. I hope I made a point. Okay, now let's continue. So just go ahead and draw a slanted line into the waistline from that back piece, and then you're going to work on this part. Add your 2 inches here and then cut out everything. So insert your scissors from the waistline at the side and then cut out through to that 1 inch mark and all the way down to the crotch of the back. After which you're going to also cut out the 2 inches mark you gave for the back measurement. So some people like to leave it this way, but I'm going to also remove 1.5 inch so I can have a gap there. Next thing I did was to trim out the length, and then at the waistline I repeated the same thing I did for that of the front. I'm just going to insert my scissors and then just slit the sides open. After I was done, I will go ahead and just mark this as the back piece. So the next thing I'm going to do is to stitch this crotch area on both the front and the back, and also cut out the pocket. So to cut out the pocket, I laid my front piece this way on the table, and then I deducted 1 inch from the beginning like this, from the waist like this, and then afterwards I went down below by 7 inches, and I'm just going to make a chalk line there and also notch the area. And as for the pockets, I cut out a long rectangular piece of fabric like this and folded it into 4 equal halves. This is going to enable me to cut out 4 pieces of pockets. Now the next thing I'm going to do is to duplicate the same measurements I had on my pants on the pocket. Okay, remember I made 7 inches mark there. I'll just go ahead and do the same thing on the pocket and place my hand this way just to make a curve. This is just like the simplest kind of side pockets you can make for your dresses anytime, any day. And after you're done marking it this way, go ahead and trim out the excesses. In order not to mix up our pockets, I will go ahead and mark the wrong side so that I will know which part goes to which side of the pants. So the next thing I'm going to do is to place the pocket beside the pants this way with the right sides facing each other. I'm just going to stitch them by 1/2 inch on all the sides of the pants. Okay, so I'll stitch that and get back to you. So guys, after joining everything, I placed my front and back piece right sides facing each other, and then I stitched the pocket by 1/2 inch and then head over to stitch 1 inch at the sides. Okay, I'll go ahead and repeat the same thing for other sides. Don't bother about the back piece if it's bigger than the front, because that's how it's supposed to be. So stitch the pocket by 1/2 inch and also stitch 1 inch all the way along the sides, just like you see me doing. And after you're done with that side, the next part you're going to stitch is the crotch area. Okay, so just align them with the joining parts meeting each other. Make sure that everything is aligned and arranged, and then stitch by 1 inch all the way down to the length of the pants like this. After you're done with this side, head over to the other side and also stitch by 1 inch. I'll head over to the machine and do that as well and get back to you. This is what I had after I was done stitching. Okay, and this is how it came out looking like. So there is 1 inch from this part all the way down to the sides of the pants. Remember that the pocket is stitched with 1/2 inch. So for the length, I'm just going to hem it later on, and then I repeated the same thing at the sides like I explained. And also at the crotch area, you can see that everything has come into place. I had 1 inch of stitches running from this end all the way to the other side. And the next thing I'm going to do is to hem the lower part. I'll just fold it double this way and just stitch on it. The next thing I'm going to do is to measure the circumference of my waistline in order to cut our band. Place your tape rule this way on one end of the pants and then rotate your tape rule to get the circumference of this waist. This is not my actual waistline. My waistline is going to be determined by the elastic band, which I'm going to be cutting after cutting out the band. So guys, after I was done taking my tape rule around the waistline of this pants, what I have is 60 inches, and I'll be adding extra 1 inch to cut that out on the band. So after cutting out the band, this is what I had. So I cut out two pieces for it because of the front and the back piece of this trouser, and then I'm just going to mark the wrong side. After which I'm going to join one piece of it like this to make it into one long piece, and then I'll head over to the ironing table and press half of an inch on both sides. I also went ahead to fold it into two equal halves like this to bring out the shape of the waistband. After I was done, this is what I had. I got the midpoint and folded it into two equal halves. Then I'm just going to use my tape rule and measure 0.75 inch on both sides. Okay, so just to determine where I'm going to be creating a hole, or rather eyelets, for our rope. Okay, so if you don't have your eyelets, go ahead and make a buttonhole on that part. So I'm going to use a buttonhole to create an opening there. Now this is the opening where we are going to insert our rope. I'll go ahead now and create my buttonhole and get back to you. So this is what I had after I was done. So this is how it looks like underneath, and this is how the front side looks like. The next thing I'm going to do now is to fix it on our bands. And as you can see, I gave half inch on both sides of the band. That will be the sewing allowance we'll be needing to stitch the band. Here is the elastic band and the rope I'll be using for this. So my rope is about 60 inches long. You can make yours longer if you wish. So to stitch the waistband to the pants, go ahead and turn it inside out, okay? I mean that of the trouser. Turn your trouser inside out and let the wrong side be facing you upward. So this is the right side facing each other, okay? That is the right side. And the next thing you need to do is to place the right side of your band directly on top of your waistline like this, with the midpoints touching each other. Now in this case, the midpoint is the place where there is a joining on the fabric. So just go ahead and rotate it this way and stitch it all around by half of an inch, and then stop at the back. This is what I had after I was done. This is how it looks like. So this will enable me to have my rough edges hidden inside of the band. And as for this point where the bands are meeting each other, I've gone ahead to stitch it, and what I had there was 1 inch left. So as you can see, and next thing I'm going to do now is just to fold this inwards. I'm going to turn it to the right side, and then I will just close it this way and then top stitch it all around. And when stitching, I'll go ahead and stitch directly on the other line I stitched when I was joining the band from the back. So just go ahead and pin it in place to secure it, to prevent it from moving around, and also do the same thing all around. For me, I'm going to be pinning like major points of the band. I'm going to pin the middle, the sides, and the back as well. So I'll just pin it all around so that I can have a neat finishing. After I was done pinning everything, the next thing I did was just to iron it, and then took it to the machine to top stitch it all around like I said. And then I need to leave one particular side, like on the back I will leave about 2 inches space, which will be an opening where I can insert my elastic band. So the essence of this elastic band is to help us gather this to our desired waist measurement. So now I am done stitching, and this is how it looks like. So I left about 2 inches space on the back like I said. I'm just going to bring out my band and measure my waistline. You can go ahead and use a bolder band, preferably about 1.5 inches band. But this is what I had. I'm just going to make use of what I have, okay? So I'll go ahead and measure my waistline circumference, and then use that to measure the elastic band. And after I am done, I'm going to take away about 3 inches, and that is going to enable me to have a firm fitting waistline. Let's say your waistline is 33 inches. Measure 33 inches on the waistband, and then take away 3 inches from it, and all you have left is 30 inches. Now insert your safety pin into the elastic band, and then use that to take it around the waistline. This is what I had after I was done inserting the band. Take away your safety pin and then all you have to do is to stitch it by 1 inch. After I was done stitching, this is how it looks like. I went ahead to also top stitch on it twice and then I dragged it into the waistline. This is how it came out looking like. The next thing I'm going to do is make an opening there and stitch this part where I inserted the elastic band from, and I'll just go ahead and use my seam ripper to create an opening on that part where I made a buttonhole, and then I'll be stitching 2 lines on it with a distance of ½ inch each. So this is what I had after I was done making my first stitch all around, and I'm going to go downwards and make the second stitch as well. So after making my second stitch, I now have the casing where my rope can pass through, and that's the part where I will take my rope all around with the same safety pin I used initially. So guys, this is how it looks like after I was done. The next thing I'm going to do is to knot the both ends of the rope to prevent it from snapping back into the waistband. I have also gone ahead to hem the lower part. This is what it looks like. And with that being said, we've come to the end of the tutorial. Let me know what you think about this pants in the comment section. Thanks for watching. Remember to like, share and subscribe, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.